Day 3. That's all the old horrific, I'm thinking at the same time, whole steel's gone. The old tank, cum bearer type, whatever they were, been cut out. The exhausts have gone as well, the old outlets for whatever they were, build pumps and whatnot. Now that I've done all this cutting and grinding, that's all flush, it's all nice and flat. I'm going to give it a bit more of a flap disc later. I'll have to just make sure that there's no cuts into the plate. I think I might have just gone a bit too deep in that corner, but I'll run a weld in there, that's no big concern. It's always hard to cut old metal out with tools. The angles are difficult. No matter what you use, you're applying lots of heat, or yeah, it's a fiddly work. The next step now is basically, I've had a quick hoover. I'm going to go and get a glass of water because it's hot. I mean, I don't know what the temperature is in this engine bay, but it's oh god, it's unbearable for me. But anyway, it's like a cooker. Great. So I'm going to strip all the paintwork now, get this all stripped back to basically steel. My chosen method of that is actually just a carbide scraper. There are a lot of ways of doing things I appreciate, and there's probably a tool that will do it a lot quicker, but in my opinion, like a grinder and a cup wheel, which I've got 2 new ones, I will use that, but just get a scraper and just go big lines of scraping, and it just lifts all the loose stuff off so quickly. I find that to be a very effective start process for paint stripping. It's a bit, labour intensive, but then this is work, so it's fine. But we'll get all the paintwork stripped out and get this kind of basically prepared. And tomorrow will be the main start day for fabricating a couple of tanks. Now, the Beta 38 specifies a minimum of 9.5 square feet, or it's 0.88 recurring meter squared for a tank size. It's not about volume. Volume can aid a little bit, I suppose, but it's about surface area. So if you can imagine, if we had a tank here, so let's say it's coming out 40 mil, something like that, the volume of fluid isn't going to make any great difference, because it's the contact on this plate, because there's going to be a body of water behind here. This is your swim, and the body of water is what's absorbing the heat from the plate, from the hot water. So hot water conducts into the plate gives it out into the canal, river, whichever body of water you're on. So it's the surface area that you're after. You want as much surface area as possible. So there's 2 ways I can do this, because I've measured this swim up already. I could just about squeeze 1500 mil or 150 centimeters long, but the calculations I did on paper would be 60 high or 600 millimeters high, and this is not quite high enough. This comes up to about, I don't know, 580, but it's got a slight camber because it's I believe the craft will sit slightly proud at the bow. Some boats don't, some boats do. Either way, the only way I could get around doing it on this swim would be to cut through the bulkhead and extend the tank through the bulkhead, which I've done a million times before. But I don't think it's going to be quite on the edge of just having enough cooling, which isn't good enough. So the simpler answer really is to create 2 tanks. This way we can overcompensate for cooling, so the engine could be used absolutely at its full whack if it needed to be, and the tanks would happily deal with the extra heat. That way it will look good, it will look nice, and it'll just be right. It's not a great deal more workman's review, and that way I can just leave the bulkhead as it is. The only things I want to do to the bulkhead is, in each corner I'm going to clean that and run a weld up the corners, because I don't trust it. The bulkhead has been stopped here. I don't think this corner and up there has been welded. In fact, you can see the gap, which is just rubbish. I mean, it's not really a bulkhead now, it's more just a plate of steel just sitting there. I've taken off this beam of steel here, which was offering a little bit of rigidity, but because I'm putting in a new engine bed or bearers, I'm going to offer some support there, and I will return a piece of steel here once I've got everything installed. I just wanted to get that out of the way. I'm just doing my strip ball, make sure this tank. So the Beta 38 is a Kubota engine, and it's actually rated at 35 horsepower, but it's better to overcompensate than to undercompensate by all means. So what we'll do is we'll do the basic calculations in old-fashioned hat, so horsepower. So it's very simple. 38 divided by 4 equals 9.5 square feet. Now, I've done that in my head already. I'm not a great mathematician, so I already know what that is in square feet. That's the recommended minimum cooling for 38 horse. So working out the space in there, what we've actually got is, I'll try and draw this on camera. I'm not sure if you can actually see this or not. There you can. So this is looking to the bow, and obviously this way is then outside the stern. So this is the stern of the boat. This is the swim area, and the idea being that water will rush down past this to meet the propeller. As the propeller is thrusting water away, it allows water to be delivered here. So when doing the cooling for the cooling system, you're not looking for volume, ironically, because of the surface area of contact. That's what's going to be doing the heat exchange. When you build three-dimensional heat exchangers for, say, like an oil cooler, you go for as many fine tubes as possible because you're creating as much surface area as you can. But we're not going three-dimensional on this. It's a two-dimensional scenario. I'll come back to that in a second. So basically, I've been up already. I had another check with my tape measure. Each length of swim, and I'm talking both sides because we've got two sides to work with if need be. We've got, I did it in metric, so let me just work out what it is in the imperial for you. So 55 inches or 4.5 feet long, and it's, I think it was 1.5 feet high. So we've got that twice. So one tank isn't going to be big enough to cool the engine at full revs. I mean, no one uses their engine at full whack anyway, but we still need to make sure that can be done for a prolonged period of time, because overheating the engine would be poor on my part. So the options I've got here is this side of the boat, which is the port side. I can put the tank through the bulkhead, but even if I do that, it's still not quite long enough to give adequate cooling. So and it's partly because of the height. When I did the calculations at home before I came over, I worked out that ideally, in metric terms, I want a 600mm by I think it was 150 mil. Sorry, 1500mm long. But I can't do that because the height of the tanks are 470 by 1400. So they're not quite big enough on one. So what we'll do is we'll do pair of tanks. We'll do parallel. So they're parallel tanks, but they'll work in a series. So what happens is the engine will dump the heat from the heat exchanger, one side of the tank. That will deliver it round to the cold side. The cold side will deliver it to the top side of the other tank, and then from the bottom of this tank will come back round to the engine here. I mean, I'm probably going to route it a different way to that. So what I will probably do, what I did before, is the hot side on this side will come across the bulkhead around the back, because the engine has the hot heat exchanger here, and that's where it dumps it out. So the direction of water will be out the engine, up through here, into the tank, along here, along a baffle, back into this corner. So the cold corner down here will then come back out, and I probably want to then run this along the bulkhead and up into the top of this tank to have it then circulate back round and back here, and then the cold come back along to the point of the engine here. So we're going to keep all the fittings at the front of the engine. I think it'll be tidier that way. We have a spider visiting us on camera here. It's actually decided to make a nest on the camera while we're talking. There's a little money spider, if you can see that. Anyway, so one tank isn't going to be quite big enough. In order to make that tank big enough, I'd have to cut through the bulkhead, which I've done before on a smaller engine, and that works really well. Ironically, that boat's actually on the yard here for another job, and that was a long time ago. So what I'll do is I'll do pair of tanks. It looks nice. It allows for plenty of cooling. You've got two sides. Why not make the use of the space? And that way we can guarantee cooling. So because I obviously keep chopping and changing metric, because in this country we like to mix that up. It just gets confusing. I like inches, but working millimetres is the modern way. So this was done in horsepower. So this equation here, so 38 divided by 4 is the equation for horsepower. This divided by 4 exists because of the thermal properties of steel. Some clever academic boffin somewhere worked out that equation, and that's what we're working with. Hello, who are you?
Hi, I'm Tom. I'm part owner at P&S Marine. I do all the admin and I operate the crane here.
Which is a pretty serious job in my opinion.
It's a big responsibility.
It is. And what's your vision for the modern boater?
The modern boater, well,
speaking as a liveaboard.
Yeah, I live here in the marina myself on board a boat.
Who lives with you? Are you on your own or?
No, I've got a little girl and my girlfriend.
Oh, so you're a family boater?
We are.
Crikey, so you've got first-hand experience of what it's like to rely on your boat?
Yes, basically. Yeah, it just needs to work, doesn't it? So you just need to make sure everything's up to spec, and that when you need to rely on something, it works, basically.
So transparency, reliability, dependability?
Yeah.
And that's what you want to transpose to other people?
Basically, yeah. I mean, we try and be as transparent as we can here, and it's sort of reflected on our, you know, our goodwill, and everyone seems to, you know, agree that we try and be as fair as we can, and, you know, transparent with our prices, and we offer DIY here that not many other boatyards do. And
one thing I must say I've seen you do is you will happily walk around a boat with someone and explain things the best you can to try and help them get on board with where you are with your engineering perspectives.
That's right. So once the boat's been pressure washed, before we move it inland, we'll walk around the boat with the customer and give them basically a free overview of the condition of their hull, and that sort of results in what they need to do in terms of galvanic protection and stuff. You know,
and then also the running gear and all the other associated equipment if they live on board, and I know you do commercial stuff as well, so it's quite a host of things you'll cover.
Yeah. We'll basically do everything but build them here. So if you've got any issue with your boat whatsoever, give us a call and we'll try and help you as best we can.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, not a problem.
I'm Ralph. I'm owner and partner of P&S Marine.
What's your vision for the modern boater?
My vision for the modern boater is transparency, honesty, and delivering service to them that are all of those things. Basically, when they get their boat back, depending on whatever it is we've done to it, it just works.
That's reliable, yeah?
Very reliable.
We like that. Thanks, Ralph. So we made a good start on the tanks. As you can see, we've got BSP sockets for the in and out, and I welded on a smaller socket for the bleed point for the tank. That's the primary bleed point for this tank. So I put a little lever valve or ball valve in line that in there. I'll have to run a little tap just to clean the thread out because there'll be some weld spatter in there, same as here. And what will go in there is these brass BSP hose tails. So these will actually help secure the hose on there with a clamp. They're barbed, so it can't pull off. They just screw in. We've got some lever valves, some other fittings to go on there so we can isolate the tanks should the engine ever need to be lifted for any reason. That keeps the fluid in the tanks and just makes the serviceability of the engine system much easier. But what we've done is we've welded everything up, and we've run, so with the actual sockets, we've run a root weld on the other side, which is like there, and then I've run a second weld on top of that, and I've turned the whole thing over and I've run another weld on the inside. So that's nice and good. The idea is to make sure this tank is solid and reliable. Hello Jack.
All right.
What's your name?
Jack. Said it.